Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining the Surrey Board of Trade. I'm Anita Huberman. I'm CEO of the Surrey Board of Trade in British Columbia, Canada. And I'm an honorary captain of the Royal Canadian Navy, appointed by Canada's Defence Minister. I'm coming to you from the unceded territory of our Coast Salish peoples, specifically the Kwantlen, Katzie, Semiahmoo, and Tsawwassen First Nations. Thank you so much for joining us today on our Discover Trade and Investment series, today focused on business opportunities between Canada and Ireland. And of course, it is the day before St. Patrick's Day, and what an opportunity we have to learn more about Ireland, to learn more about the Canadian-European Free Trade Agreement, and opportunities as we go through economic recovery, not only within Canada, but with our global partners as well. Events like this simply do not take place without sponsorship. Thank you so much to our presenting sponsor, PW Trenchless Construction, and you're going to hear from them very shortly. Thank you also to our business and international trade center sponsors, the law firm of Fasken, the Chambers of Commerce Group Insurance Plan, represented by SNF Benefits, and BDC, the Business Development Bank of Canada. I'd also like to recognize a government official that's with us this morning, City of Surrey Councillor Stephen Pettigrew. Stephen, thank you for joining us. Just some instructions before we begin and some opening comments. All attendees are muted. If you do have a question, please put it in the chat function of the Zoom technology, and I will get to it after all the presentations are over. If we're not able to, then the answer will be sent to you after the presentation. So just think about your questions or any comments that you have about doing business between Canada and Ireland, or even the Canadian-European Free Trade Agreement. Now, before we begin, in honor of St. Patrick's Day, the Consulate General of Ireland in Vancouver and Consul General Frank Flood have generously donated a bottle of Glendalough whiskey, BC-owned Mark Anthony Irish craft whiskey made in Glendalough in Ireland. And so we're pleased to present the 17th person that logged in this morning, this great, amazing bottle of whiskey that you're going to enjoy, hopefully, with your family in your bubble. And congratulations to John Kearns from the Sheraton Vancouver Guildford Hotel right here in Surrey. Congratulations to John Kearns. And we have your address from your registration, and we'll send that bottle of whiskey or deliver it even to you in a socially distanced way. So just to let you know about the Surrey Board of Trade, we are one of the top 10 largest chambers of commerce boards of trades in Canada. We have 6,000 business contacts as members. We're a city building business organization where our whole mandate is to support business and bring business into the city. And Surrey is going to be the largest city in British Columbia by 2030. Yes, even larger than the city of Vancouver. We have 1.3 million people that are going to be moving into the Metro Vancouver area by 2050, and many of them will choose Surrey as their destination to live, learn, work, and play. And Surrey is also part of our South Fraser economic region, which includes Langley and Abbotsford. There are so many industrial assets happening right here in our city. We're a border city. We have an international docking facility. We have co-location opportunities for international businesses. And our Surrey International Trade Center, we're here to create those global business connections for local businesses. So, ladies and gentlemen, I also wanted to say that we're so pleased to have so many corporate partners as part of the Surrey Board of Trade. And in our city building business organization, one of our key businesses, very innovative, is PW Trenchless Construction. And to say a few words from our presenting sponsor is Mr. David O'Sullivan. David, over to you for a few words, please.
Thank you, Anita. PW Trenchless Construction, it's an Irish-owned company in British Columbia. I came to Canada a long time ago, so I'm one of the Irish exports, if you want to put it that way. Underground utilities, not exactly something that most people think about, but according to the Lancet, it is the most important medical advance in the last 150 years. In Metro Vancouver alone, we have about $30 billion worth of infrastructure, and that needs constant upgrading and maintenance. These are just some of the examples of trenchless construction that happened in British Columbia. Lots of different types from the RAV line to sewer replacement. And a major innovation that happened in British Columbia. The benefits of trenchless construction can be demonstrated to lower carbon emissions by about 90%. The province of British Columbia 2 years ago was the first government in the world to recognize that, and now allows carbon offsets for trenchless construction within the operations of all cities in British Columbia. Thank you, Anita.
Thank you so much, David, for your support and sponsorship. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm so pleased to welcome MLA from Surrey Whalley and BC Minister of Energy, Mines and Petroleum, the Honourable Bruce Ralston. Bruce, over to you for a few words, please.
Great, it's great to be here this morning. I want to acknowledge first that I'm speaking to you from Victoria, the home of the Lekwungen speaking people, represented by the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations. Also, clearly want to extend greetings from John Horgan, our Premier, who is a proud Irish descendant. Were he here today, the Premier would be quick to bring up rugby, talk lacrosse at length with you, and once again compare it to hurling. I know he'd also want to wish you a happy St. Patrick's Day in advance of Ireland's National Day tomorrow. So welcome to this webinar. A big thank you needs to be extended to the Consulate General of Ireland, the Surrey Board of Trade, the Ireland-Canada Business Association for organizing and hosting this event. As Minister of Energy, Mines and Low Carbon Innovation and the Minister responsible for the Consular Corps here in British Columbia, I appreciate your efforts in connecting people and businesses together and strengthening ties, especially during these unprecedented times. BC and Ireland are in many ways very much alike. We share an abundance of rain and a green landscape. We have a similar population size of about 5 million people. We have a foundation of family ties and strong cultural connections, with more than 15% of British Columbians claiming Irish ancestry, although I expect tomorrow it will soar to an estimate of above 50%. The opening of the Irish consulate here is, I think, represents the degree to which we have drawn closer in recent years. We have a close collaborative relationship, trade relationship. British Columbia's exports to Ireland were 18 million, and I know we can improve on that. And imports from Ireland amounted to 68 million. And I'm told it wasn't all fine Irish whiskey and spirits. We both have fast growing tech and life science sectors and a strong interest in building a low carbon economy. We are like-minded, and together we can build on our connections and promote and advance bilateral trade. With our focus as a government on restoring and growing our economy, British Columbia sees tremendous opportunities to expand our exports, whether merchandise or service exports, through the Canada-EU Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement. That's why British Columbia encourages Ireland to finalize the ratification of CETA. The trade agreement makes it very much easier for British Columbia and Canadian companies to do business in the EU. Today's webinar that has been put together is the type of dialogue we need to have to advance innovative ideas and to build brand new economic partnerships. I'm sure you'll find the next hour interesting, informative, and fruitful as you work together to increase trade and investment flows and the prosperity of our two jurisdictions. Have a great webinar. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Bruce, for joining us this morning. I know you have a very busy schedule and you're always there for the Surrey Board of Trade. Now, I just wanted to welcome the Consul General of Ireland based here in Vancouver. He's, of course, a member of the Surrey Board of Trade as well. And just a little bit about him. He's Ireland's ambassador. He served as Ireland's ambassador to Estonia before taking up his position in Vancouver. He has significant experience, ladies and gentlemen, in working to promote peace and reconciliation on the island of Ireland, overseas development aid, and the promotion of bilateral trade on 2 assignments in Belfast. He worked overseas with the United Nations Development Program in Addis Ababa and served as Vice Consul in the Consulate General in Boston. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome, based right here in the Metro Vancouver area, Consul General of Ireland, Frank Flood. Frank, over to you for a few remarks.
Thank you, Anita, and thank you very much for your kind words. Welcome, and particularly to the Minister Ralston's encouragement to support our collaboration between BC and Ireland. I would just like to give a few words of context for this morning's event from the consulate point of view. I came here to British Columbia in 2018, and at the time there was only one Irish official mission in the west coast of North America in San Francisco. Since then, Ireland, we've opened up the brand new consulate in Vancouver. We've opened up a consulate in Los Angeles. Our trade agency has opened up an office in Seattle. Our investment people have opened up an office in Seattle, and we're expanding the operation in San Francisco. And we also opened up a trade office in Montreal. So Ireland sees Canada particularly as a great friend, a country which we have not paid an awful lot of attention to from the point of view of engagements, particularly in the West Coast, from a trade perspective, because Ireland and Canada have so much in common that sometimes we don't always engage fully as much as we could have. And I think with the pandemic, the situation has now got to the situation where we're now coming out of the pandemic. We're looking around for reliable and stable and people who can work with in the future. Because one thing I think the COVID-19 pandemic has taught us is that we can't take anything for granted. And Ireland opened up an embassy in 1939 in Ottawa, and we never expanded our diplomatic network since then. We relied on the great work of honorary consuls, such as John Cheevers in the past in BC. But now it's time to get serious. And so I think this morning's event is very opportune and comes at a great time at St. Patrick's Day. Because St. Patrick's Day, of course, is about celebrating our Ireland's National Day. And we like to do so with our friends. And there's no better friends than our Canadian friends. Canada, and particularly BC, has always made the Irish feel extremely welcome. And I know the likes of David O'Sullivan, who's done so well here and since he's come over, and many young Irish people. There are about approximately in a normal year, pre-pandemic, there's approximately 5,000 to 7,000 young Irish people come over to British Columbia and work here and enjoy great hospitality in the beautiful BC and simply love the place. So I know that this has led to a re-emergence and a resurgence of interest in Ireland in British Columbia and Vancouver. And we have the likes of Rory Spillane here today, who's on the line, I believe, and Rudy is the president of the Vancouver chapter of the Ireland Canada Chamber of Commerce. And Rudy is a younger version, perhaps, of David O'Sullivan, hardworking, dynamic, intelligent, and capable. And certainly, it's great to have this opportunity today to celebrate our friendships and to see how we can work better together. Because there is some collaboration going on, but you know, it is relatively modest trade up to now. It's as Minister Olsen has said, it's 18 million exports for BC and 68 million imports. And I think we can do a lot more, and we can certainly do far better on the tech side and as part of the green recovery. But there are great companies, great reasons to go to Ireland, particularly now with Brexit. Ireland remains and is a fully committed member of the EU. 84% of the Irish population in a recent survey supported membership of the EU. We have common law, it's much the same as in British Columbia. We have a similar culture. We have a Eurozone. Ireland is a founder member of the Eurozone. So if you're looking for a stable country, a user-friendly partner, then look no further for Ireland for an entry point into the EU. And I must say, the one thing that's sometimes overlooked and can take for granted, and I think post-pandemic we should not take for granted, is our friendship and how helpful the Irish people can be to you should you ever wish to invest in Ireland. And Ireland is the type of place, if you hear you're from Canada, you are welcomed with open arms. If we hear you're from the greater Vancouver area, we roll out the second red carpet. And if you are interested in doing business in Ireland, you'll find the Ireland are so helpful. They will welcome you. If they can't do business with you, they will suggest people that you can do business with. And what we have found from our experience is that whenever people make the effort to go to Ireland, because it is a bit of an effort because you naturally trade with your partners, that it is well worthwhile. And I'm sure that the Canada Ireland Business Association, Hickey there today, will add to this. And of course, Emma Daherty, who give her expression, and of course, Suzanne Drisdale, who's the Canadian Trade Commissioner in Dublin. Because we've asked these great business people to come together and to give you a brief from a Canadian and an Irish Canadian perspective on what it's like doing business in Ireland. Because on St. Patrick's Day, it's about coming together. It's about developing friendships, and it's about looking forward to the future together, particularly in this pandemic area. So I think of all St. Patrick's Days, this is the most optimist and opportunist time and the best time to come together and to work in the future. We have a number of Irish companies already, or Canadian companies have already been to Ireland. Press readers been there. Tell us who you may know. It employs actually 2,000 people in Ireland's subsidiary in Cork and in Dublin. We have mining companies such as Equity Exploration. We've got Group 11 and Coastal Mountain Exploration. And of course, we also have Mark Anthony, and Mark Anthony brand. They came to Ireland, I believe it was in 2014, 2016, and they bought a share in Glendalough whiskey, which is made in County Wicklow in Ireland. And then December 2019, things had gone so well, they bought it out. And so the Consulate now uses the Glendalough whiskey as our standard present, because it symbolizes friendship between British Columbia and Ireland, and it symbolizes the potential for trade between Ireland and British Columbia. And so it was very appropriate this morning that we had a little present of it, and I hope John Curran particularly enjoys it. So I'd like to thank you all very much, particularly for taking part and joining us in what is the Consulate's National Day trade event, and particularly to thank, of course, Anita and all the team, the Surrey Board of Trade, for putting on the event this morning, especially Heather Booth and Melissa Peel, who put so much work into making this all happen. So, Gurl Minamag with Claire, and in case I don't get a chance to say it again, Lá Féile Pádraig Sunday Claire, happy St. Patrick's Day. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Frank, and for your partnership to our organization here at the Surrey Board of Trade and to the Surrey International Trade Center right here in our office. Ladies and gentlemen, joining us are three amazing representatives based in Ireland. They're coming to you from across the ocean. And I'm just so honored and pleased that they're joining us this morning, and you're going to hear their perspective. There's three of them, and I will introduce them in turn. Our first speaker, again, all the way from Ireland, is Kate Hickey. She is the executive director of the Ireland-Canada Business Association, which is a representative voice of over 100 companies doing business between Ireland and Canada, 70 of which are Canadian companies with Irish operations. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Kate Hickey for her presentation. Kate, over to you.
Thank you, Anita, and thank you very much to the Consulate General Flood and to Melissa in the Surrey Board of Trade for organising today, and greetings from a lovely sunny Dublin on the eve of St. Patrick's Day. And we're delighted to have this opportunity to showcase to you why Ireland is such a popular location for Canadian investment. Just to tell you a little bit about ourselves, the Ireland-Canada Business Association is the voice of Canadian business in Ireland. And we have three objectives. The first objective is to communicate on behalf of our members. We ask our members what are the issues that are important to them in terms of they're doing trade with Canada, and how can we help them? How can we work with policymakers and with key decision makers to help Canadian companies establish operations and do business in Ireland with ease? Secondly, we aim to connect our members to each other and put people in touch. I mean, by chamber standards, we're a relatively small organisation, but we say that our size is our strength, that it's easy to get in touch with key members within our organisation, that a lot of our members would know each other, and we like to put people in touch with each other and provide a platform for our members to showcase what they're doing in the Irish business landscape and how they can assist Canadian companies coming into the Irish marketplace. And the third objective that we have with our members is to educate them on issues that are relevant to Ireland-Canada trade. And the current issue at the moment would be CETA and the ratification of this really progressive trade agreement between Europe and Canada, which is already offering significant benefits to EU member states and to Canadian companies. And once it's ratified, which we hope will be soon by the Irish government, there'll be even more benefits to be realised. And currently, the Ireland-Canada relationship is very strong, and the Irish government has pledged to double its impact in Canada by 2025. And on the ground here in Ireland, we're feeling that. In the post-Brexit landscape, the interest of Canadian companies in Ireland has increased significantly. And on the reverse side, that Irish companies are looking to diversify and beyond the UK, and there's approximately about over 600 companies exporting to Canada, and about 6,000 people are employed by Irish companies across Canada. As a business association, if we can assist you in any way, please get in touch, and we'd be delighted to help you or put you in touch with companies that are already here, and let them voice to you personally the experience that they have of doing business here. And a lot of the reasons that people are doing business here is because of the people, and they say that that's quite special. So thank you for this opportunity to meet you and to let you know about the Ireland-Canada Business Association. And on this note, I would just like to introduce a member of our association, Emma Daherty. And Emma is a partner in Matheson, Ireland's largest law firm. And I'll just go back to you, Anita, for the formal introduction. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kate. And we have some questions for you later on. And also from Ireland, I am pleased to welcome Emma Daherty. As mentioned, she's a partner in Matheson's International Business Group, where she practices corporate law and works with international companies on the establishment, expansion, and operation of their businesses in Ireland. She advises clients on complex legal issues that can arise on international transactions. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Emma Daherty. Emma, over to you.
Anita, thank you. And thank you, Kate. It's a pleasure to be here today, and happy St. Patrick's Day to you all. I'm based in Glendalough, so I'm not too far from the site of Glendalough Whiskey. So it is an honor to be here today. I'll just share my screen. Is that showing there okay?
No, we can't see it yet.
Anita, is that working there?
Nope.
Any look there?
Nope. Emma, oh, there we go. Now
Okay,
it's good.
perfect. Okay. Okay, so hopefully you can see and hear me, and if you can't, just let me know.
We can see and hear you.
Okay, super. Thank you all again, and it's a pleasure to join you. Kate, I know you had asked me to speak a little bit about why companies choose to expand out of Canada and why they look to come to Ireland. And I'll give a very brief overview of that, but please do feel free to jump in any questions at the end. I know we've plenty of time for Q&A, and happy to take any follow-up questions afterwards also. So as you know, Ireland has a long-standing track record for companies looking at international expansion, and in particular for companies looking at European expansion. Ireland is home to all the big names, the top 5 global software companies, 14 of the top 15 medtech companies, and all of the top pharma companies. And we've very much seen the evolution of business in Ireland from traditional manufacturing to more high-tech and advanced and automated manufacturing, to investment in sectors including tech and social media, food and beverage, retail. I work with growing companies that are focused on international expansion, and one of the things that we've seen increasingly in recent years is Canadian companies. And together with the ICBA and the IDA, we've worked with a lot of Canadian companies that are focused on the European market. As you said already, there's more than 70 Canadian companies with Irish operations, and they've created more than 7,500 jobs in Ireland. And you can be proud of some of the local names you'll see there on the slides. You'll see that predominantly they're from sectors like energy, tech, and consumer and business services. When we talk about tech, we're really talking about everything from network and wireless, AI, machine learning, gaming, automation, animation, esports, robotics, social media. So a really broad range. And lots of interesting, innovative companies from Canada have come to Ireland and expanded there. And we see lots of the sectors that are growing, in particular around engineering and fintech, life sciences, and others. So what do these companies put into Ireland is one of the questions that I get asked all the time. And a lot of the time we do see companies looking at putting strategic functions into Ireland. So they're talking about their international headquarters, their R&D centres, their customer support centres. And Ireland has proven to be a really good location for the mix of strategic functions that can be very helpful on international expansion. Why do companies typically come out of Canada and look to expand? And I would group it into 3 key reasons. The first is to drive sales, And that's really driven by access to our European market, and I'll talk more about that. The second is about real-time customer support for their international customers. And Shopify, for example, is a company that has talked a lot about having a remote guru support team in Ireland, which enables them to do a 24/7 one-on-one customer support service. So that's been a really, really important factor. And the third reason why we see people looking to expand is around building engineering teams and accessing talent and expertise. And your own tech company, Clio, has talked a lot about that cloud tech sector specific expertise that can be quite hard to track down. So why do these companies come and look at Ireland? Well, it's this really nice, sweet mix of factors that we see drawing them in. The number one factor, and Frank mentioned it already, is Ireland's access to the EU. We are now, since Brexit, the only English-speaking EU member country, and that is incredibly significant. Obviously, Eurozone member as well. And the EU, even after the exit of the UK, remains the largest and the wealthiest economic bloc in the world. And it's Ireland as a base to access Europe that we're really promoting here today based on the track record of other companies. So why, aside from that, is Ireland a good place? Well, the education and the talented workforce is the key factor that keeps coming back. When we survey companies and we ask them, why did you come? Is it successful? Are you looking at further investment? The common factor that always comes back in the surveys is about the workforce. So we have a talented and flexible workforce. The evidence bears that out. So we have the youngest population in Europe. Ireland has one of the most educated workforces in the world. Nearly 55% of 25 to 34-year-olds have a third level qualification, and that's compared to an average across the EU of about 40%. We have a huge focus on both creative arts and STEM subjects. So nearly 30% of students in third level education are enrolled in science and tech and engineering and math subjects, very important for the tech industry. And aside from that, Ireland has a huge multicultural focus. So we've people working here from all over the world, nearly 400,000 non-Irish people working in Ireland. So that balance of factors is very important. Our legal and our political system is very important. We see our common law system very similar to the UK and Canada, and that's very familiar to companies coming into Ireland and easy to access. Practical things, your agreements tend to be familiar. You tend to understand the system. It's different. It's much easier than navigating a civil law system, for example. We also see competent and business-friendly regulators. So that is something that is very, very noticeable. We see companies looking at Ireland as a jurisdiction of choice from a data protection perspective, for example. We're a small country, and that means that our policy and decision makers tend to be very accessible. That has surprised a lot of companies coming into Ireland, how easy it is to meet people, including very senior government representatives, investment agencies, boards that can be of help. So that is something that should be borne in mind by anybody coming, a lot of help available. And all of those factors really go to our ease of doing business and our competitiveness. And the other thing, I guess, that I couldn't not mention is our tax system. So we have a 12.5% corporate tax rate. We have other R&D tax credits and other incentives available too. But maybe more significantly, we've been ranked first in Europe for ease of paying taxes. And our transparent tax system is easy to navigate, and that I think in itself is very significant. We have double tax treaties with 72 countries, and that is something that has made a huge difference to companies coming in, looking at a broader international expansion plan. Our support and our commitment to foreign direct investment is very significant. And only last week, our Taoiseach Micheál Martin emphasised our support and the importance that we place on FDI as a cornerstone of the Irish economy. We are committed to welcoming international investment, and our Canadian investment and support for Canadian investment in particular, as Kate has already referenced. CETA, the trade agreement, is a hugely positive development. I'm incredibly optimistic about it, and I know Suzanne is going to speak more to that shortly. The final factor that I want to mention, because I couldn't not mention it, is the combination of the culture, which I know Bruce mentioned, and I think the similarities between us are very, very important, but also the support that's there. So Kate's organization, obviously, the Canada Business Association, but also the IDA, which is Ireland's government investment agency, is very significant. So the IDA has a full-time representative, Deirdre Moran, based in Canada. And in addition to providing grant aid and funding in certain circumstances, it can provide assistance with real estate, networking, introductions, business information, recruitment. So well worth getting in touch with, and obviously happy to help as well. Getting in touch with the IDA if you're thinking about opportunities for investing in Ireland. But there is a huge amount of support available. Also the other Canadian companies that have made the track before you, I know will be happy to help, and we regularly see information being shared by other investors. So I'll leave it there. It's really that balance of factors that has made Ireland a good location for companies that are looking to access talent, innovation, and the European market. And I think that track record is borne out by the clusters of companies that we see in Ireland. I know there's loads of time at the end for Q&A, so I'll pause there, Anita.
Thank you so much, Emma. And if you can disable the screen sharing, that would be great. And absolutely, we look forward to getting some questions over to you at the end. And our final speaker, also from Ireland, is Suzanne Drisdale, a senior Canadian diplomat and trade commissioner with Global Affairs Canada since 2001. With international postings in Turkey, Czech Republic, and Ireland. She has extensive experience within Global Affairs Canada in trade promotion, trade policy, innovation, scale-up support, ministerial communications, and overseas mission management and operations. So Suzanne, over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Anita, and thanks to the organizers for inviting me to speak. It's really nice to speak to a Canadian audience. It's actually one of the silver linings, I think, of this pandemic, is that we can actually speak to each other more regularly. We're all getting used to these virtual events. I have a few slides, and what I'd like to talk to you about will build on the other presenters. I'll talk a little bit about the role of the embassy, and within the embassy, the Canadian Trade Commissioner Service, as well as the resources and tools available with the Government of Canada for Canadian companies. And I'll also touch on CETA that was mentioned earlier. So we are a small team at the Canadian Embassy in Dublin. This is, on a good day, we have 15 or 14 people. So this is not everybody, but this was taken just before the pandemic, just before we shut down in our embassy. Currently, we have sometimes some people still working there for consular services to Canadians, but the rest of us are working remotely and adapting to that. Like any embassy function, there are some key functions within the embassy. The first one I mentioned is consular services, so helping Canadians in trouble, passports, citizenship certificates, this kind of thing. Of course, then there's the political section, which is diplomatic relations between Canada and Ireland. And finally, there's the Canadian Trade Commissioner Service, or the commercial section. Currently, I'm the acting ambassador, but my usual job is the head of the commercial section. So when we think of the intimidation, I think, that companies can face looking at international business, for so long, Canada relied on the US market. And we've seen over the last 20 years that more and more focus has gone to other markets, which are high growth, new opportunities, new innovations, but they bring different challenges. And it's great when you can speak English, but that is not always the case. Or it's great when it's a familiar culture or legal system, as was mentioned earlier. But this isn't always the case. There's regulatory issues, customs duties, business culture, and even, as was mentioned, there are so many similarities between Canada and Ireland, but there still are some business culture differences, and there's taxes. So one of the things that the Trade Commissioner Service, the commercial team, helps Canadian companies with is understanding all of these things and providing advice and importantly, information on the market and also local contacts. Now, just in terms of, again, why trade is important, everybody knows, I couldn't believe, I just checked, it's actually 32% of Canadian GDP is dependent on trade and exports. I thought it had actually been in the 20s, but it's gone up since the last time I checked. It's also part of our Canadian and Irish economic recovery out of the recession and out of the pandemic is to trade. So in many cases, if a Canadian company wants to grow, it's really important to go beyond your border. Now, in terms of the services that we offer at the Trade Commissioner Service, having people on the ground to support you is important. We are located in over 160 locations around the world. So market information, intelligence, local contacts. I'd say the biggest thing is local contacts. It's about finding the right connections or being introduced. It's always nice to have a warm introduction instead of emailing a stranger. Ireland is very, very friendly, and it is a small market, so it's great that way in terms of being able to access people, but it does help to have the Canadian Embassy on your side, and as well as our partners such as the ICBA and its members. The Government of Canada also has different support programs. We have exporting guides and we have funding. So you might know about Can Export funding. It's targeting small and medium-sized businesses. If you wanted to work on your business plan, go to a trade event, go on a mission, translate your materials into the local language. These are things you can apply for funding for. And there's lots of information at that website. Some of the other resources we have, if you go to the website, there is a Can Export magazine, which features articles from various Canadian companies in all different sectors, women-owned, Indigenous-owned, rural. It's really a cross-section, and there's a lot of lessons learned. There's also a step-by-step guide to exporting, which helps you understand where you're at in the readiness journey, I guess, of getting ready to export or invest abroad. International trade missions, we hope we can do those again sometime soon. We were going to have one last year with ICBA to Vancouver, but it had to be postponed. So I've actually seen now there's actual virtual missions, and in some cases even more people can join than could have otherwise. And when there's big international trade events in different cities around the world, often the Trade Commissioner Service, the embassy, will have a booth or will have some programming to help match people together. So these are some examples. And then of course we have different webinars and sessions. We are active on Twitter, the Trade Commissioner Service, Service des Délégués Commerciaux, as well as the Embassy of Canada's handle is there if you want to follow us. And I said I'd mention CETA, the Canada-EU Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement. It was mentioned earlier by several speakers. It is really a big milestone. It was provisionally applied in 2017, which means that most aspects of the agreement are already in place and the export of goods is already happening. And we've seen already a great increase in, especially I'd say the Irish are taking advantage of it quite well, a huge increase in exports to Canada, but also the other way around. So it is preferential access to each other's markets. The big thing is, of course, no trade tariffs. So if you're selling something and you want to be competitive versus an American company, for example, or another company from another country without access to these preferential tariffs, you have a cost competitiveness there that gives you an advantage. It also has things like access to public procurement. So it opens up different levels of procurement where you have equal footing as a European company, as well as more streamlined customs procedures. So rather than having to deal with 27 different country, Hungarian and Slovak and Czech and Turkish, actually Turkey's trying to be a member, but they're not yet. It means you can have a streamlined system too that's more predictable and actually easier to follow. And finally, enhanced labor mobility. This is another thing that the embassy is really looking to delve into more, because it does provide Canadian companies an ability to actually do business in Europe and cross borders and move across borders in different ways. Normally, Canadian visitors to Europe have a 90-day visa. CETA enhances that amount of time that you can stay depending on the situation that you're in. So when we look at the bilateral trade, since pre-CETA, which was 2016, there's over 50% growth in our bilateral Canada-Ireland trade. So there's a lot of data already showing that the provisional application is working. When I say provisional, there's another part. Once it's ratified by all EU member states, there are additional features that will kick into gear, and that's around investment rights and investment predictability, but all other parts of the agreement are already in place. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I'd say as well, another benefit of dealing with these partners who've all spoken today is many of us have dealt with many Canadian companies doing business abroad. So we've seen the common mistakes, we know some of the best practices, and that is something we are happy to share with you as well. So thanks so much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. And ladies and gentlemen, the PowerPoints will be available on the Surrey Board of Trade website, businessinsurrey.com. Just go to the international section and then go to the Ireland portal, and we'll place those presentations up later today. So if you do have any questions, please put them in the chat function. And for our speakers, if you can put your video on so we can see all of you, and I will pose some audience questions over to you. My first question is, what are the opportunities for Canadians looking at Ireland for possible opportunities? What's really the first step? And Suzanne, maybe we'll start with you.
Sure, thank you, Anita. The opportunities, I mean, for all the reasons that were flagged by Emma in terms of why Ireland's a good place to start business, and as well, some of the sectors that were flagged, IT, the areas that the embassy focuses on are also in things like clean tech, ocean tech, cyber tech, fintech. There's really an appetite, and there's a lot of multinationals here whose global value chains tie into all that. But in terms of where to start, there are some resources on our website. The biggest part is, I'd say, self-awareness and really understanding what your product is. And the biggest thing that I would say that we coach companies in is when they're trying to, I mean, it's sales, but it's adapting your sales pitch to the market. And it's talking about your value proposition and your benefits, not features. And sometimes those will change depending on who your client is. So one of the biggest things that we do with companies is to get their storyline right, to get their elevator pitch. And I think part of that is just putting together a plan and a strategy and mapping out. I know sometimes, you know, it's you have a cousin in Ireland or a nephew, and sometimes that works as well. It is a small market, but it's also good to have a little bit of homework done and understand your customer and how you're meeting a need.
So you really need to commit yourself to the market, you know, when you can be on the ground to really understand not only the culture, but also the culture of doing business, right?
Definitely, and it's important to be persistent, and I think stay in touch with people. I think in any international environment, including Canada, relationships are really important, and it's not just a transaction, it's often a relationship if you really want to grow it beyond the initial transaction. So, and understanding how business is done. I would say Ireland tends to be, you know, less formal than many other places in Europe, but it is still Europe. So, you know, business is often done in the pub, but it's always nice to go conservative first. So, for example, maybe don't use first name right away until the other person does. These are just kind of maybe things that are common sense, but perhaps might not be obvious in Canada.
And Kate from the Ireland-Canada Business Association, any other further feedback that you have for Canadian businesses?
We find again and again that sort of the cultural sort of spills over, and you know, the cultural line between Ireland and Canada spills over into the business. And when Canadian companies are looking at European location and they're talking to their senior management teams about relocation to within Europe for a certain period of time, it's the attraction of Ireland as a place to live and work that means we win over some of our competitors for Canadian investment. And that's something that sort of rings very closely to people that are deciding to locate the European headquarters here. So that's fairly important. There's a lot of agencies in Ireland here, particularly the IDA, that are here to help Canadian companies come into the Irish market and to use it as a platform for accessing the European market. And through the IDA, a lot of other things fall into place in understanding the Irish business infrastructure, in knowing what the key sort of agencies are and knowing how to employ people. So there's an awful lot of support here for international investment. And within each sector, there's really strong trade associations that work with, you know, companies within their sector of any size. It could be an individual, it could be a company employing them less than 10 people, but they work with them through networking, through introductions, and they help them establish themselves here. So we have a lot of supportive players in the environment here to help Canadian companies succeed.
And Emma from Matheson International Business Group, your law firm, can you give us a perspective not only for Canadians wanting to do business in Ireland, but legalities, access to skilled labor? What kind of considerations around talent should they be considering and be aware of?
I think that in itself is one of the key factors that draws people to Ireland. So that pool of people that are there is definitely one of the big benefits and advantages of looking at the Irish market. I think the practical considerations are worth considering. So obviously, not only do you have access to people based in Ireland, but you have access to people based across Europe who would, you know, be happy to relocate. And we've a big multicultural mix here in Ireland of people, not just from Ireland. So that is a big advantage. But I think the practicalities, if you're looking at setting up in Ireland, you're thinking about, well, who am I going to hire? Where are they coming from? Where are they going to be based? And in a remote world now, that's obviously a big question, because there's flexibility that we maybe didn't have before for some businesses. And then with that, you've practical challenges around tax registrations. If you have employees who aren't based in Ireland but are working for the Irish company, that's something that you need to consider. So it's really about thinking through the logistical and the practical challenges. But in the background, there is a lot of flexibility there.
Consul General Frank Flood, I'll pose this question to you first. Can you tell me your perspective about the value of the euro and Canadian investments to the Canadian currency? Is that an opportunity, or what's your perspective with the whole currency relationship?
And thanks, Anita. Well, I think the perspective is certainly one of stability, in that Ireland is a founder member of the Eurozone. So there are 27 member states in the single market in the European Union, and of them, 19 are in the Eurozone. So if you're dealing with Ireland, you're linked in immediately to the other 18 countries from a currency perspective. So it's one of it's cumulative, that basket of advantages that Emma was highlighting for doing business in Ireland. It's not just one particular factor. Obviously, corporation tax and the pool of talent are the major ones. But the fact that Ireland is on the western coast of Europe, which means there are 2 hours time difference between Ireland and Eastern Europe, it's just another factor that makes it easier to do business in the EU, and it gives people stability and an assurance that with the euro, which it's 66, it's 3 to 2, so €2 is $3, and you know that's going to be the currency rate for the next foreseeable future. The euro is as stable as the dollar, and there's nothing untoward going to happen to it in Ireland.
Kate, from the Canada-Ireland Business Association, can you give us an idea over here in British Columbia, the cost of real estate, taxation, red tape challenges that businesses are facing, whether they're entering the market or existing Irish businesses?
I think, Suzanne and Emma to support me on this, but I think commercial real estate in Dublin, the capital, is very expensive. And for that reason, a lot of the recent investment we see coming in is going into the regions. And companies are being encouraged to locate outside Dublin. So some of the more recent companies coming into the Irish market, there's a company called Greenfield Global, a Canadian market, and they make ethanol, which is used in hand sanitation products. But they've located about an hour, about 100 kilometres from Dublin, in a county called Laois. And they're making a significant impact on the local economy there. So like any, sort of European country, capital, commercial real estate is expensive. And so companies coming in are looking at other locations. And Cork will be a key location as well.
So very similarly, in Surrey, we're outside of Vancouver. The cost of real estate very high, and businesses are looking. There's a gentrification of businesses from Vancouver to Surrey, south of the Fraser, other communities, because also that's where their staff are living too. But Emma, can you provide a perspective on, cost of real estate, taxation, red tape, opportunities or challenges?
Yeah, I think the answer is really in what Kate has said, and I think a lot of that is about choice, and that's one of the big advantages of Ireland. So, where the cost of real estate is very high in terms of commercial real estate or office space in the city centre, a lot of options exist in the regions, as Kate has said. I think there is also going to be a huge shift in dynamic in a post-COVID world. So I think, we have a lot of vacancy now that we didn't have before. We also have businesses that are going to adopt a remote working model. They won't need as much office space as they had before. So that's very much a changing environment here, I would say, at the moment. And it has opened up a lot of opportunity for companies. So a lot of companies, I think, will have the option to take flexible space, for example, and will have the opportunity to maybe look at different options. But to your point, Anita, I think what they're going to be able to offer employees is flexible options and packages that match with where they live, which will give them greater advantages. And there are incentives and benefits available depending on the region you invest in. So that can be a good advantage of looking outside of the city centre, where the taxes and the real estate might be higher.
And Suzanne, I'm really interested in your perspective as well from Global Affairs Canada, the whole trade commissioner model. You're right there on the ground as well. What issues have you been seeing, or what opportunities related to red tape, taxation, or real estate?
Well, Ireland is, I've been posted, of course, in other countries where there has been a lot of red tape. So it's quite a refreshing change to be in Ireland, where it's actually fairly straightforward, transparent. It's in English, which is always great. This was my first overseas assignment where it's in English. So it really right away takes away a lot of the stress. And then you can always ask if you don't know. It is a high cost of living in Dublin, but it's true that including the Canadian company Shopify, which was here for quite a few years as an investor. All of their employees work from home, and they always did, even before the pandemic. So what I've noticed traveling around the country is just the quality of life is amazing. You can be very close to Cork, for example, which is a very innovative, high-tech pharmaceutical IT finance center, but live right by the ocean. Where can you find that? There's only a few places in Canada, perhaps, that have the same balance. I'd say the barriers are few. The fact that we have CETA makes it easier, which is all about making things more obvious, easier to find information. The big thing is just to be organized and have a strategy and do your research. And as I said before, the common mistakes are often going in without having done that, or putting your forks in too many fires, trying to do 5 different countries at once. Once you have a success in Ireland, for example, when it comes to a product and you need to get CE mark, you've got it for the rest of Europe. You don't have to then do it elsewhere. Once you conquer and establish yourself in Ireland, it is opening the other countries in Europe. So in that sense, it's actually a lot less red tape, I would say, than other countries where you're dealing with perhaps a different bureaucracy, another language. Those things, you know, you don't have to worry about them. So I would say, and then of course, I would also say, you know, work with partners, work with service providers. So that's why we work with the ICBA and its members, such as Matheson. We will often, if somebody's looking to hire and they want to know competitive rates on salaries, or they need someone to help them hiring, or they need certain services. I mean, we have those contacts, and it's worth investing in those so that you save a lot of time instead of trying to do everything yourself. And you might also find early on, you might pivot in your approach. So be flexible, but do your homework, I would say. And that would, I just think there's so many benefits and opportunities to do business here.
Consul General Frank Flood, you know, we spoke in these previous presentations about CETA, the Canadian-European Free Trade Agreement, and we're finding a lot of Canadian businesses don't realize the opportunities related to that. I wanted to ask you a bit of a two-part question related to that, and that is, are Irish businesses looking at co-location opportunities within Canada? And part two is, in Surrey, we have a thriving development and construction sector. And there's a lot of Irish citizens that are helping us in that industry, providing a source of labor pool. So there's opportunities for co-location and opportunities to really increase our human capital as partners together with both of our countries. Can you comment on that a little bit?
Yeah, certainly, Nita, and thanks for asking me that question. I'll start with the second part, if you don't mind, because as I was saying earlier, we get about 5,000 young Irish people coming here on a normal year. That's pre-pandemic, and many of them work in the construction sector. And I know that there's about 60% of construction firms in BC have shortage of skilled labour. And the young Irish that are coming over, I mean, from the point of view of the consulate, they're absolute pleasure to work with. They're hardworking, they're dynamic, they're smart, they're intelligent, so well educated. And the construction work, they love the construction work, and they get in there. I remember going out to Vancouver Airport when it's still being constructed, and being shown around a bit. And we got to a gate, and it was lashing rain. And there was a young Donegal woman there, and she was well known for, you know, putting a smile on everybody's faces, because she has a great sense of humor, and it was just lovely working with her. So I think one of the key messages I'd hope you get from today's event is that you know, the Irish do love working with the Canadians. It's great to be here. We love being here, and there are lots of Irish people at the moment very interested in coming over post-pandemic to work in this sector here. And the construction sector has always been an attractive place to be. And many Irish do very well working on the construction sector. So certainly, if you need employees, please look to Ireland. On the co-location side, I would say, just to add to the comments made earlier, the standard advice, I suppose, from the consulate point of view, is if you're looking to Europe, the EU, do look for a partner in Ireland to help you expand your business. And likewise for the Irish coming to North America in general, we would say start with Canada and start with BC and find a local partner here that can help you expand your Irish business. So at the moment, I would be aware of one BC company opening up in Ireland, and I wouldn't be aware of an Irish company opening up in BC. Obviously, I can't say who they are till it becomes public, but in both cases, they're looking for partners. And I think with the friendship and the collaboration and the cultural similarity, that working with partners is very important. And just to add to the other comments, while I have the floor, is, you have Rory Spillane there, and you've got the Vancouver chapter of the Ireland Chamber of Commerce, and they can tell you about different places and whether to go to Cork or Sligo or Galway or Donegal. And you can get the inside knowledge as well. So when you're doing your research work, don't hesitate to contact the Chamber or the Consulate. And we do have in Toronto, Enterprise Ireland's office as well, which works on with the small and medium-sized trade companies, as well as Deirdre Moran and the Investment Authority of Ireland, the IDA. So there's a lot of support out there, and do not hesitate to ever reach out to us or any member of the Irish, and we'll be as helpful as possible.
Thank you so much. I wanted to just ask Suzanne, are you planning a digital trade mission to Ireland with a focus on doing business between Canada and Ireland in the near future?
That's a great idea. We don't have it planned right now, but I think that we are planning with the ICBA a virtual event in May, a business summit, which of course would be open to companies and people from both sides of the Atlantic. I think that once we have a new ambassador here, it will actually add to that capacity, and I think it would be a great idea. Probably we do it in partnership with a group like ICBA. I think that would be a good way to get people's feet wet. It's always nice to visit and have the umbrella of the government or the embassy or a partner to open doors. That's really what trade missions do. The other thing I'd suggest is to look at international events. Often there are big events in the region where a lot of Irish companies go. So even if you're trying to target Ireland, but you're going to Web Summit in Spain or Portugal, or you're going to the UK for the ocean technology, you'll still meet. And that's where our role comes in. If you want to meet a group of Irish companies, and perhaps you can then do a trip to Ireland on the way back to follow up. But there are many ways to try to target buyers and partners and outside of Ireland as well. So we're happy to talk to any companies. We're also open to ideas from partners. If you'd like to do a trade mission with us, let's talk.
We will talk with you. Certainly our role at the Surrey International Trade Center is to build those global business connections for local businesses. So closing remarks, I just wanted each of you just to talk about any incentives in doing business in Ireland or any other words that would help us understand the value of doing business together. So Kate, from the Ireland Canada Business Association, let's begin with you.
Just to conclude that, Ireland it's a great little country to do business. And particularly for a Canadian company, there's a lot of support there. And you have the resource of Suzanne and her team in the Canadian Embassy. Suzanne works with Mina and Caroline, and they have a great sectoral knowledge of what's going on in the Irish marketplace and what's relevant to companies coming in from various relevant sectors. So there's a good infrastructure here. And we'd welcome you and embrace you and delighted to have a chat with you at any stage. And hopefully we will get to do a trade mission and to meet in person in the not too distant future. So thank you, Anita.
Thank you so much, Kate. Emma, your thoughts.
Thank you, Anita. And it's been a pleasure to join you all today. It's a time of the year when I'd normally be traveling, so it's great to do some kind of virtual trip. In terms of closing remarks, what I might just close on, and it's a question I've been asked a lot just in the last month or so in particular, is how Ireland is faring in the COVID world. And I think it might be worth just mentioning, because obviously globally we've seen a drop in foreign direct investment. And certainly if we were to go back pretty much exactly a year, we'd see the introduction of a series of lockdowns across the world, which I think took a lot of us by surprise. And there was definitely some uncertainty. But in that context and background, Ireland has fared really well. So the United Nations recently published a report that said that Ireland was one of only a few countries globally that actually saw an increase in investment during 2020. So we had 20,000 new jobs, we had about 250 new investments. So really, really successful story. And I think that's partly attributable to the infrastructure that's here and how resilient it was. So we didn't see interruption in supply, and we saw really good continuity of services here, notwithstanding that our world was turned upside down in many ways. We saw a fifth of all COVID-related products globally being made in Ireland. So a huge success story. And a lot of the companies, maybe the smaller companies who this time last year were thinking about making a move and had held off, we have found in the last couple of months in particular, have come back and said, actually, we're interested in kicking this off again. And the logistical systems have transformed to adapt to the world. So simple things, you can now open a bank account in Ireland remotely without turning up in person, and you can incorporate a company. So there's no reason to pause or put your plans on hold, and we are seeing companies moving forward with investment plans, obviously due to the good track record that others have there. And as Kate and Suzanne have said, a lot of help available. So I would encourage companies to fire ahead and do their diligence, as Suzanne says, but it is a good time to make your move.
Thank you so much, Emma. Suzanne, your thoughts?
Thank you. I would say, just to reiterate, Ireland is an open economy. It's a trade and investment economy, and it is the stepping stone to Europe. So I would say a lot of Canadian companies don't know about the Trade Commissioner Service or Export Development Canada or the guides. So do your research or reach out and we can help you with it. It's amazing what's available out there, including money and funding. It just takes focus to find it, and we'd be happy to help you find it.
And Frank, our Consul General right here in Vancouver, you have the final word.
Thank you, Anita, and thanks everybody for taking part in today's event. And I hope you have a great St. Patrick's Day tomorrow, whatever happens. And certainly, I suppose it's great to have it today. I was one of the initiators behind the event today because I was aware that the Ireland Canada Business Association and Suzanne and the embassy were planning to come to British Columbia last May, and it was part of a regional program, and I think it was addressing the issue that I call it the Rockies issue, that unfortunately from an Irish point of view and an EU point of view, when we think of Canada, we don't think of Western Canada. You know, and unfortunately, many a trade delegation coming from Ireland has stopped east of the Rockies, and it is one of the main priorities for the consulate to push for more attention on Western Canada, because it is such a beautiful part of the world, and you've made us feel at home here. The Irish really feel at home. We really appreciate being here, and it's just a beautiful part of the world. So certainly I hope today that it was meant to be a catalyst to encourage the Irish to come to BC. And I certainly hope that we have two trade missions now after this morning's event, one in person from Ireland to British Columbia and one in person from British Columbia to Ireland. So I will leave it at that.
Thank you so much to all of our panelists. This session is being recorded and will be put on our website at businessinsurrey.com on our Ireland portal. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much to our presenting sponsor, PW Trenchless Construction. Make it a great business day, everyone, and happy St. Patrick's Day tomorrow.